published every week since 1890. The Courier comes off the press every Tuesday, and the Plain Dealer is out every Thursday. In the offices and shop directly opposite the courthouse, editor and publisher Curtis confers with compositor Herb Hudson and Bert Lyslow. Downtown St. James is the hub of this thriving, energetic community and is the shopping center full of area's farmers. The Chamber of Commerce and the town's devoted public servants have worked hard to make the bright, pleasant place that it is. The stores are modern and well-stocked. The buildings present an excellent appearance, and the streets and lawns are well tended. History shows that the first settler in this area was a homesteader named Olson, who settled here in 1869. The next year, J.R. McLean opened a dry goods store stocked with goods brought in by ox team. The town has come a long way since then. With an eye to progress, the city's fathers have arranged to have natural gas installed in the township. The resultant benefits to the businessmen and homeowners will reach enormous proportions. The fuel will be brought from the Williston Basin over in North Dakota and Canada, and the fields in Texas 1,000 miles to the south. The gas is transported under pressure for hundreds of miles to bring the advantages of this fuel to the many consumers in the southern Minnesota area. The gas can be piped directly into homes and factories. The pipe these men are laying will bring natural gas to many factories and industries which could not use the fuel before. And the fuel can be bottled and used in areas not serviced by the pipeline. Transportation difficulties are not common in the supplying of natural gas, another asset of this cheap, efficient fuel. The supply of natural gas is virtually unfailing, and this clean fuel has many uses. It can be used to run tractors and to run the machines of industry. Because of its purity, the gas can be used by greenhouse operators without fear of damaging their plants. The director of the Waterworks Funeral Home is Helmer O. Zirkland, who is also the mayor of St. James. Elected for 2 years, Zirkland took office in January of this year and has served well. In June, the mayor was faced with the problem of seeing the town through the flood threat brought on by exceptionally heavy rains. Mayor Zirkland is presently building a house adjacent to the funeral home. Mayor Zirkland is a busy man, but like all men of achievement, he finds time to indulge in his hobby, and in this case, it's photography. Whenever he is not directing the city affairs or serving on the Civil Defense Committee, the mayor gets out his camera and takes pictures. Zirkland uses a press camera of the same type used by news photographers. His collection of pictures has won him acclaim as a leading amateur photographer, and his work is nothing short of professional. Heavy rains fell in June. The lake was close to the overflow level when Mayor Zirkland issued the call for volunteers to help put up dikes. More than 300 persons answered, and soon the sandbags were piled high to hold back the flood. Though bridges were washed out in the area, the town was saved through the efforts of the mayor and the volunteers. The town's Waterworks is another of the fine buildings which grace this community. St. James is proud of this installation. The town is no less proud of the neat and clean appearance of the streets, and directly responsible for the appearance of the streets is Carl Brudelala. who drives the familiar street cleaner's truck, keeping the city clean. Attending to the spiritual well-being of the town are the many fine churches in St. James. Churches such as the St. James Catholic Church and the First Lutheran Church of St. James. These places of worship are regarded by many of the townspeople as some of the finest buildings in the area. The Calvary Episcopal Church is one of the oldest churches in St. James. The St. Paul's Lutheran Church is the newest in the town and was built at a cost of more than $200,000. The Reverend Emil F. Peterson is the pastor of this church. On Tree Line 2nd Avenue stands one of the prettiest churches in St. James, the Baptist Fellowship Church. The St. James Methodist Church was built in 1925, and the St. James Assembly of God Church was erected in 1935. The Augusta Lutheran Church is at Weston Avenue North and Armstrong Boulevard. The Apostolic Faith Church is on 8th Avenue North. In July, at the Apostolic Faith Church, Miss Leland Thompson and Merlin Bjorklund were married in one of the most beautiful weddings of the season. The Reverend Francis Ellis officiated at the ceremony, which was attended by more than 100 friends and relatives. Later, the traditional cake cutting took place in the basement of the church. The newly married couple examined some of the many gifts they received from friends and relatives. At the large reception, Mr. and Mrs. Bjorklund were surrounded by a crowd of well-wishing friends who showered the young people with gifts and presents, which will give the couple a start in the establishment of their new home. In the faces of these guests can be seen the generosity and cooperation which makes the people of St. James the warm-hearted, loyal friends they are. The American way of life is baseball, and St. James was represented in the Western Minnesota League this summer. The Saints didn't set any records, but they played the game. The team has been disbanded, but there is always the hope that the Saints' gray uniforms will be seen on the diamond when the season rolls around again. Part of small-town life is a hotel usually found downtown near the center of the business district. The hotel is the stopping point for the traveling men, the railroad men, and the visiting baseball teams. The railroad men are not as numerous now as in the early days when St. James was a busy railroad town, but they are still a part of the picture. A great number of trains pass through St. James because of the rerouting made necessary by the floods in June, which washed out many of the rail facilities. The right-of-way has been restored now, and the traffic isn't quite so heavy, but the town is still important as a rail center. There was a time when 3 roads met at St. James, and the old St. James Hotel was filled to capacity with railmen. Played a great part in the history of the nation and the development of communities like St. James. Yes, this is our town, a town of 4,000 industrious people who have made this rich farmland into a thriving community. For more of the story of this area, join us next week at the same time at St. James, Minnesota, USA. This is our town.